Hey guys, so today I just want to break down this song release trailer that I shot with my artist friend Evan Burrison last month.
That I'm still closing down the local bar on Friday, taking home the Kyoto Express. Cause that last call last night had me up till sunrise. Today I guess I wake up a mess.
So essentially, Evan hit me up and was like, hey man, I've got this song called No Rest that I'm releasing next week, and my buddy Will said that we can use his family's bar, which is on the second story of his grandma's house, believe it or not, to shoot some promotional content for the song, being that it's very much a bar, kind of beer drinking country song. So the initial idea was just to go in this bar, shoot a couple TikToks, get some photos, and move on. But I saw this as a good opportunity to shoot something a little more cinematic and with somewhat of a storyline to it that is aligned with the song itself. And that's when I came up with this idea the day prior to shooting for this song release trailer video. Hopping into Milanote here, this is the little storyboard shot list that I put together the day prior to shooting. So the idea was just to open with some sort of performance scene, and then when the chorus hits, we cut to this very fast-paced, high-energy montage of Evan essentially just getting rowdy at the bar, slamming beers, and this scene ends with Evan getting in a little bit of a bar fight, getting punched and knocked to the ground, which then we cut to a singing shot of Evan kind of face down singing as he finishes off the chorus, now on the ground, and then cutting to this wide high angle shot of Evan just laying on the ground, absolutely wasted. The bar's a mess, and that essentially was the plan for the video. We wanted to keep it really simple, being that we only had 3 hours to shoot this. So considering the time as well as resource limitations that we had, being that we shot this with zero budget at all. Before jumping into the cinematography breakdown here, we shot this entire video on a Canon R5C, and we had a 28 to 70 millimeter f2 lens, which we shot the majority of the video on, and we also had the Canon 16 to 35 f2.8 lens, which we used just for that final wide shot of Evan laying on the ground. So opening the video here, we have this wide performance shot of Evan as well as his two band members, Will and Ryan, performing the song leading up to the chorus in this bar setting. The first light I threw up was this Amaran 200D off just in the bathroom over here, which is what is pushing these nice cool blue tones into the foreground, and that was just on a light stand off in the bathroom just out of frame there. I knew I wanted this to be a very cool kind of tone coming from this room just to add some depth to the image as well as color contrast, being that I knew we were going to key with a little bit of a warmer light. But this light is fixed at daylight, 5600 Kelvin, so I knew I was going to have to adjust the white balance on my camera, which I believe my camera's white balance was set to around 3000, maybe 3200 Kelvin in all of these shots here. So because I had to adjust the camera's white balance, I knew I was going to have to warm up my key light. So just out of frame left here as our key light, we had an Aperture 600D that was just on a C-stand, and this was being bounced into a sheet of unbleached muslin. Sorry for my poor diagrams here. Being that the 600D has a fixed color temperature of 5600 Kelvin, I knew we were going to have to warm that up. And so by bouncing that into unbleached muslin, it not only softens our key light, but it also warms it up as well. That key light, after bouncing into unbleached muslin, I noticed was still a little cool, and I wanted to warm it up just a tad bit more, so I added, I believe, a quarter CTO gel to the front of that 600D, and that is essentially how we achieved this image. There was no other lights at play. The only other very crucial thing to this shot, as well as all the shots in this video, was the haze. So we filled the bar with quite a bit of haze just to lift that ambient tone of the bar up a bit, as well as just add some more atmosphere. It's always, especially in a setting like this, it's a good way to just bring up that atmosphere and bring up the levels in the space a bit without needing a ton of light. And then the camera movement of this was just the smooth kind of tracking forward, which I just did on a gimbal, as well as I was riding a hoverboard, one of those things that were popular back in 2016. I had one laying around and I use it from time to time just to get smooth tracking shots when I don't have time to set up a dolly or anything like that. And I thought it actually worked really well. So that's essentially how we achieved this shot. So then moving on in the video here, we cut to this fast-paced montage of essentially Evan just slamming beers in different locations in the bar. At this point in the shoot, we realized we didn't have a ton of time to really dial in the lighting on these shots, so we just kept that Aperture 600D bouncing off that unbleached muslin in the corner of the room. And then we just moved an Amaran F22C light mat that we had around accordingly to just key our subject wherever he was in this bar. Here we just brought that Amaran F22C behind the bar, threw that guy on a C stand, and that was set to a warmer color temperature, most likely around 3200 Kelvin. And we essentially just pushed that on the far side of Evan here to key him and wrap that light around, somewhat motivated by these warmer overhead light fixtures that were in this bar that you could see in the background there. Other than that, we just had that 600D in the background here. I think you can also just see the unbleached muslin in the background there, and that's just giving us that warmer tone in the background of our frame here. And then we have a couple shots kind of cut throughout this montage at the start as well as near the end of this fake like snorri cam setup. We essentially just had the camera on a tripod, had Evan secure that around his waist, and then as he kind of just moves around the frame, it follows his body movement, which essentially gives this very disoriented, drunk feel. And we essentially just had Evan spin around and move around the bar and just drinking beer as he had this camera secured kind of around his waist. Just off to frame left here, we had that 600D bouncing into that unbleached muslin, giving us this kind of warmer key here on our subject. And that's the only light that was in play here. We had Evan kind of just moving about the bar, so we didn't want too many fixtures on the ground, being that they will potentially be seen in the shot. And I just exaggerated the motion blur around the frame to push more of that disoriented feel to the shot. And then we have this punch shot here where essentially Will punches Evan and knocks him to the ground. This is my first time ever shooting any sort of fight scene, if you can even call it that, and I was actually pretty happy with how it turned out. I thought it looked pretty realistic. I don't know, you could let me know in the comments below if you agree or not, but essentially what we just had here is a shot over Evan's shoulder of Will punching Evan, and then cuts to a shot of Evan dropping to the ground and finishing off the chorus of the song. For the punch, this was just handheld. I wanted to kind of have a little bit of a rougher feel to it. And lighting wise, to kind of give some perspective, that 600D was kind of just off in the corner over here. Not really doing much in this frame, bouncing into that unbleached muslin, giving us that return, which is giving some light on the shoulder of Evan here. And then we took the 200D, which was in the bathroom of that hallway in that opening shot, and we essentially just brought that out of frame and just bounced that up into the corner of the room over here to give some sort of blue ambient light in the background here. So essentially we just want to bring up the levels of the background, being that it was falling off into darkness, and we want to introduce some color contrast with these cool tones here, somewhat motivated by this kind of blue neon sign that you can see in the background. And then to key Will in the shot, motivated by this overhead fixture here that you could see at the bar, we just brought that F22C light mat and used that just to key the far side of our subject. And again, filling the room with haze, kind of bringing up that atmosphere in the background, giving us kind of a little bit more to work with there. So moving into the shot as Evan falls to the ground and finishes singing the chorus. As you can imagine, we just brought that F22C light mat overhead, which is giving us this warm key on Evan's face as well as his body. And I was really happy with how this frame turned out, right? You've got a lot of dark and light patches kind of throughout this image. The only other thing I did here was add some crushed cans in front of Evan to introduce some foreground elements just to dirty up the frame a little bit and add something more than just Evan laying on the ground, which I thought was a nice little touch to the frame. Then our final frame here as Will kind of walks out of frame and Evan's just completely wasted on the ground. You can see those cans that I added right here. The only light that was at play in this shot was that 600D, which as always was off to the left of the frame here, bouncing off that unbleached muslin, which was essentially just providing all this light. And then we also had some cooler blue tones being introduced from just the ambient light spilling in from the window that we had open on this side of the frame. Production design, again, we have these crushed cans on the ground, and then essentially we just tipped over some chairs here in the background just to further the production design a little bit, right? We had Evan kind of in this bar fight, as you would imagine. The bar would kind of look like a mess after two people get in a fight. So that's kind of all we did on the production design side of things there. And that's all I got for you for this breakdown here. It was a very fun little project to shoot. This concept is something that we do want to eventually make into a longer full-length music video. However, just with limited resources, being that Evan is an up-and-coming artist that's not signed to a label, there's not a ton of budget that we have to put behind these music videos, but nonetheless, they're a very fun creative exercise, and it's fun to kind of get a little scrappy once in a while and just do things on zero budget at all, just with the resources we have. So we'll see if we actually are able to pull off the longer form music video. I do plan to do more of these cinematography breakdowns, so if you enjoyed this one, let me know in the comments below, and I appreciate you guys watching this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.